What's good, BookTube? It's Monty, and today I am back again, once again, to do a wrap up. I realize that we are far into the month, which is why I'm going to attempt to film this and upload it all on the same day, which is not usually my process, but just what we're gonna have to do. So, we're gonna ignore the fact that my face is rebelling against me, and we're just gonna get into what I read in September. These are going to be mostly in order. If I look off to the side and I don't edit it out, it's because I'm looking at my spreadsheet, because there are things that I read that are not, that I don't own. A lot of what I read in September were books that I owned or books that I purchased and read almost immediately. So love that for me. So let's just get this started. So the first thing that I read in September is actually not something I read in September, but I want to talk about it because I didn't do a August wrap up. I don't think I did an August wrap up, and I read this at the very end of the month, and so it would just never get talked about on my channel. And so that was Apples Never Fall by Leanne Moriarty. This is their latest release. This is I think people call these things like domestic thrillers, but like it's not really a thriller. Like it's just like it's not a cozy mystery, but it centers around the matriarch of this tennis family. Like they aren't like, tennis superstars or anything, but both the parents ran like a tennis coaching camp situation. Like you could learn to play tennis from these people, and they pushed their children to play tennis. Sort of, they pushed their children to play tennis, and tennis is definitely a large part of the story. But the matriarch of this family goes missing one day, and so the book revolves around the events that led up to that, both in the past and the present, and how all of that how that all converged. I really had a great time. I usually like Leanne Moriarty's books. She writes the kind of like thriller that I'm usually interested in reading. I think that she does character work really well. I do think that there is a formula to her work, and so I do not recommend binging her books. I definitely binged her books in 2019, I want to say. I read a lot of them back to back, and they do, especially some of the earlier books like Big Little Lies, The Husband's Secret, What Alice Forgot. Not what Alice, is it What Alice Forgot? I think it is. That's like the amnesia one. They all have like a similar structure where she'll do like 3 points of view, and it's a little messy. But if you read them independent of one another and you skip Nine Perfect Strangers entirely, I think you're in for a great time. But then the books that I actually read in the month of September, the first book was The Sky Blues by Robbie Couch. I talked about this in a Bookopoly-a-thon update video situation. Here we follow our main character, Sky, whose promposal plans get leaked. And so then he kind of goes on this journey to uncover who did it with the aid of the other. Like he was going to ask this boy to prom, and so him and the boy team up to like find out who did it. Allegedly. I thought this book kind of fell on its face. I don't think that the investigation into that really ever materialized, and the rest of the book was just kind of average. So I personally don't recommend this. So I'll leave a link to that update video in the cards, because I talked about a lot of these things already in that video, like Beyonce Information, Remixing Black Feminism by Usameki Tinsley. This wasn't exactly what I expected it to be. I found that if I had taken her course and then read this, I might have gotten like a bigger picture. But as it stands, this just kind of felt like an intro into a lot of different topics that other books probably delve into with more depth, but I had a good time. The next book I read was A Slow Fire Burning by Paula Hawkins. This is my first Paula Hawkins. This is another kind of mystery that I just really enjoyed. Here we follow the death of this man on a houseboat and the lives of his neighbors and his family that are tied into that. I will say that if you cannot handle reading about the death of a child, and when I say child, I mean like toddler and like younger, do not read this book, because the death/murder of that child is very much central to the overall plot of the book, and overall like what happens in relation to the other adult death that is at the start of the book. So I enjoyed it. I felt that this was a good solid mystery. I had a good time. I thought the character work here was really great. I think I gave that 4 out of 5 stars. Maybe. I forget. I don't know. My Goodreads is always linked down below if you actually care about my star ratings, and those reviews are posted as soon as I finish a book. So, after that, I read Final Girls by Riley Sager. This was kind of read in conjunction with Aaron from Booked and Busy. And y'all, I hated this book. No, Final Girls by Riley Sager was good. I gave this one 3 stars. Here we are also following a kind of a group. So the reason, the inspiration behind this was in August, Aaron and I both read the Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. And that book is ass. Start to finish, top to bottom, that book is not very good. I talked about that in a recent reads video. So I'll leave that linked. But then in September, I read Final Girls by Riley Sager because there was some Twitter drama where Riley Sager got like salty for a second when Grady Hendrix put out his book. I think he's since deleted those tweets, but they were like a thing for 5 minutes. And I want to say that if I were Riley Sager, I too would be upset because his book was so much better. It's not an amazing book, but it was a better book, and the ending actually made sense. And it was just altogether a better time. So here we followed a main character who had survived a killing and had moved to New York and was trying to put it all behind her. But then one of the other final girls comes to her life, and they reconnect, and she's kind of like pushing her out of her boundaries, and one thing leads to another. And we find out that the killing isn't exactly over, and our protagonist has to like confront her murderer. I thought the plot reveal, like the twist in that one, was like really good. I thought that actually made a lot of sense. I was actually really happy with who the perpetrator was in Final Girls. It was just an altogether better book, better experience. I definitely recommend that one over Final Girl Support Group. The after Final Girls, I read The Way of Kings by Brandy Sandy. This was 1,007 pages that I'm never getting back. It was not the worst book I read this year, but I just cannot separate. Aaron told me that the Parshendi call themselves the listeners, so I'm going to call them the listeners in this video, even though in my review I call them the Parshendi because she has since read book 2. But in book 1, I found that there was not a black racial, like, there wasn't a stereotype that is associated with racially black people that was not ascribed to the listeners. It, like, I always felt that we were 3 sentences away from calling them a racialized slur. It was all too much for me, and that took away from the overall enjoyment that I had. I wound up giving this 2 out of 5 stars because it's definitely not the worst book I've ever read. It's not the worst fantasy book I've ever read, but I do think that it's overly written. I don't think that anybody is as attached to character backstory, regardless of the character, as Brandon Sanderson seems to think they are, especially when it's so poorly integrated into the overall novel. And so even people who like Kaladin, I refuse to believe that they enjoyed reading about his childhood. I just don't believe it. I refuse. So you can come to my comment section and you can tell me that you do, and I'm just going to think you're a liar. There's just no convincing me. So overall, it was 2 out of 5 stars, from the listeners to Kaladin being the forefront of the story to everything else just kind of being okay, sure, whatever. Wasn't for me. I'm not as eager to continue as Erin is. She is out here speed running. Love that for her. It's not for me. The next book that I read was a reread for me, and that was Yoke by Mary H.K. Choi. This was the Choices book club pick for the month of September. There's a whole live show. I have a whole reading vlog where I talk. Well, I didn't actually read this in the reading vlog. It was bad. But I gave an update in that reading vlog about this, and there's a whole live show discussion. So 5 out of 5 stars. You all know I love Mary H.K. Choi. Very much looking forward to her adult book. Next, I read Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna. This was my Patreon reading vlog book, so I read it, gave them a vlog. They got my inside thoughts and knowledge. This is pitched as a dual perspective story between 2 friends, Kate Malarkey and Tilly Hart, and it's their entire friendship from the mid-'80s all the way to what was present when this book came out. It's like the early 2000s. And it's supposed to be dual perspective, but Kate Malarkey literally has nothing to do for the entire story, and Tilly Hart's entire story is just one major news event that you've heard about, and the next there I don't think is any character development or character growth, and what ultimately drove them apart I found so unforgivable as to not understand why anybody would make this into a television show. I mean, I can, because the drama is there, but the way that it's written here, you could literally, I can't imagine that the book and this and the show are similar. I can't imagine it. So I hate this. There is a sequel to this called Fly Away that I'm never going to read because I found what drove them apart to be so, just so unforgivable. Then I did a 24-hour readathon where I read Act Cool by Toby McSmith, They'll Never Catch Us by Jessica Goodman, and Heartbreakers and Fakers by Cameron Lund. There is a reading vlog where I gave very in-depth analysis and like thoughts and experiences over this. You can watch me cheat on my vegan diet in that vlog. So it's an all-around good time. I gave all of those books 5 stars. Then I read Magnus Chasing the Gods of Asgard, The Hammer of Thor. This is book 2 in the trilogy. And this is when I knew that I don't trust Rick Riordan. I don't believe that he can write teenage protagonists in a way that I want to read about. So I know that this is shelved as middle grade, but our boy Magnus Chase here is like 16, 17 years old, and he still sounds like a 12-year-old. And it's like, I have younger cousins. I mean, now my cousin is like a cool 18 years old, so he's like outside of the age of Magnus Chase. But, you know, I lived with him when he was a cool, 12, 15, 17. So like, I think I understand how like late teenagers act and operate. And do they sometimes act like, just big 12-year-olds? Yes, but not to the extent that Magnus Chase does. And so much of the humor and the jokes in this, I find, are not really aimed at a middle grade audience. Like, there are a lot of, like, all the things that are meant to actually be funny are references that only an adult audience are going to understand. And then all of the jokes for the children are just like, they're like literal fart jokes. So I have a special place in my heart for the original Percy Jackson series and for Nico D'Angelo in particular. And I have a special place in my heart for like Annabeth. And I do think that House of Hades is probably the best book that Rick Riordan has written, point blank period. Like, that's just his that's the magnum opus right there. But I wish he would stop, because I don't think that his voice is maturing in the way that his characters' ages are. So I thought the same thing in The Heroes of Olympus. I think the same thing here. I don't think I'm going to finish this trilogy. If I do, I'm probably just going to pick it up from the library, just because I'm already 2/3 of the way through. But it's not very good. It's just not. And I refuse to be excited the way that everybody else on the timeline was when we got the announcement that there's going to be a Nico series, because it's like Nico was introduced like literally almost 2 decades ago at this point. I mean, it took like 6 books for him to be confirmed queer. So it's not for me. It doesn't move my spirit, but I'm happy the children have it. Then I read Swipe Right for Murder by Derek Millman, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I don't know if this is a book I could recommend to people. When I was reading it, and I think even in my review on Goodreads, I likened this to the Priyanka Chopra show FBI. No, it was Quantico. FBI is on a completely different network, but Priyanka Chopra's show was Quantico, and it starred, the first season was them at Quantico learning to be FBI agents, and then it would like flash forward to the future where Priyanka Chopra's character was like accused of being a terrorist, and it was like it was soap opera in prime time, and I ate it up. And this is also soap opera, but with a teenager. The premise here is our main character is like on a vacation. I don't think he's on vacation, or he's doing something in a hotel with his family, and his family is like out doing something. And so he decides he's going to hook up with, get on the hookup app, and he's hooking up, with all these various people in the hotel. And then one of them winds up dead. And then he just gets pulled into this terrorist organization, and he's being accused of murder and hunted down by the FBI. And you have to have a great deal of you have to suspend your disbelief. But like I said, if you want a soapy, fun, dramatic romp, like, I just ate this up. I read most of this on stream with Erin when she was trying to read something. I forget what Erin was trying to read, but I was reading this and I was just flying through it because it was a mess, but it's my mess. And so I personally loved it. Your mileage is definitely going to vary. but I had a wonderful time. And then the last book that I read was The Bennett Women. I forget the author of this, but I'll throw it up here. It's available on Kindle Unlimited because it's an Amazon book, apparently. I didn't realize this when I added it to my want to read list. So if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can actually, at least when I got it, you could get the audio for free. And so I just listened to the audiobook of this. And this is a Pride and Prejudice retelling, I think. Maybe. I don't know. Whichever one has the Bennett sisters. But it was fine. I thought that it was a little, it had elements of things that I like. But overall, it just kind of fell flat for me. I'm not going to judge it on like a retelling level because I haven't read the original novel. But it was okay. It was all right. It's nothing to write home about. I've definitely read worse books, but I've also read books that are just far better. So those are the things that I read in the month of September. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite book that you read last month was. If you don't have one, you can always drop this emoji down there instead. And as always, I'll see you guys again soon with another video. But until then, and until next time, bye.